G'day everyone, it's Curtis here and welcome to an On The Back Wheel video. Today I'm reviewing the Triumph Trident 660. Let's get into it. So a little bit about the Triumph Trident 660. This is the Australian model, which means it is learner approved. Unfortunately, that's the only model we get here in Australia. That means they've taken off about 30 horsepower off the top, but otherwise it is exactly the same motorcycle. What you're getting is roughly 54 horsepower, 6-speed transmission, big dual discs on the front, non-adjustable suspension front and rear, single disc on the back, ABS, 2 riding modes, and this nice trick dash. We'll start off with the looks, and while looks are subjective, I think most people can agree that this is a very good looking motorcycle. Triumph have really nailed the roadster, sportster kind of look, and it's kind of modern yet classical looking at the same time. At the front, we've got this fantastic Triumph headlight. It's all LED. Everything's all blacked out. The paintwork looks fantastic. This is kind of a pearl metallic white. You can't really see, but in the sun, it really gleams. You can see all the speckles of paint in it. It looks great. Getting nice bars up front, good quality. All the switch gears, good quality. And at the back, I know these are kind of controversial and a lot of people don't really like them, but I like the rear license plate hugger. What it does for me is it really tidies up the rear end of the bike and it makes it look really sleek and smart and kind of adds to that roadster look. It's quite short and stubby looking. When I'm on it, I look quite comical. I'm 6 foot, so I'm not a massive dude, 6 foot, about 85, 90 kilos, but I look really big on the bike. It's quite a small, compact bike. We're getting good quality foot pegs, and the rear foot pegs here, what's good is they're very easy to move. It's just 2 bolts either side, and then it really cleans up the back if you want to go for that sleek look. Build quality wise, it is fantastic. As I said, the paint looks great, and it's not till you get closer that you realize they've kind of skimped on a couple of things to keep the price down. Like this cover, that's all plastic. This is kind of scratchy plastic as well. And same here, it's kind of cheaper plastic, but that's only nitpicking. It all looks really good. The indicators, I don't think you'd ever replace these with anything else. They're kind of this smoked, thin design already that looks fantastic. I don't think you'd put any aftermarket ones on there. They look great as is. The grips are all good quality, they feel great, and the bar ends are all good quality too. The mirrors are good shape, they look good, and more importantly, there's good visibility out of them. Hey. And this is only a little thing, but they've painted the mudguard so it actually matches the bike. As I mentioned earlier, this is a 660cc motorcycle, and this is a 3-cylinder. To any Triumph fans, it's be very familiar because this is basically the same 3-cylinder motor they've been using for a long time now, based off the Triumph Street Triple 675 and also the learner approved Street Triple 660. They have done some changes, but essentially it's the same motor. So what does that mean? Well, it means that the engine is very refined and very smooth. But as it's a 3-cylinder, it's still got a lot of character. I like the exhaust, how they put it down here. It's kind of neat and tidy and out of the way. It sounds raspy and fruity. Could be a tiny bit louder for mine. I would like to put on a slip-on or even exhaust system if I owned one. Now, what's been very surprising to me is this is the learner approved motorcycle, and basically it's the exact same motorcycle except they've taken some power up top. So that means the bottom end and mid-range is essentially exactly the same. So what you're getting is a really punchy, fun motor. The bottom end and mid-range are fantastic. It's not till the top end you can actually notice that it kind of flattens out where they've restricted it. I find you're better off keeping the bike in the bottom in mid-range. You can rev it out. It does sound great when it's up on those revs, but it's got a lot more punch in the bottom and mid-range. We're here in heavy traffic. I thought I'd show you how the fueling is at slower speeds. It's pretty good. Very good actually. Do some lane splitting here. Zoop. It's very good. It's not jerky at all. It's quite smooth. I was only able to get it to misbehave a little bit in a storm yesterday in really heavy traffic. Shoot up here. And then it was a little bit jerky at times, but most of the time it is extremely good and hard to fault. At slower speeds like this, you see it pulls really well off bottom and doesn't chug or go dog 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 or anything like that. It's just a kind of electric motor, to be honest. It's very smooth. The feeling is good too. You can get an optional up and down quick shifter, and I would recommend getting that. Why? Because how their motor has been designed and because they've taken the power off top, you really want to keep it in the bottom and mid-range and click through the gears a lot, and it's a lot of fun to do that. Honestly, I think you'd be hard pressed to find a quicker learner approved restricted motorcycle. This thing is genuinely fun to ride and has a bit of punch. How fast? Let's find out. Let's see how quick the Trident is from 0 to 100. Trident's got a 6-speed transmission and it works very well. It's very smooth and refined. Initially, I thought the throw was a bit long. On my first couple of rides, changing gears, I was kind of like, oh wow, you know, a bit clunky between gears, just because there's a bit longer throw than I was used to. Now I'm completely used to it, and that's probably another reason why I would like the quick shifter, just so you just banging through them. You don't have to worry about kind of every now and again. Now I'm used to it, completely smooth and a very refined gearbox. It also gives a nice thunk between gears, which is really satisfying. The clutch, it's neither light nor heavy, it's kind of neutral. I definitely would not say it's heavy, and it's easy to use and modulate. I didn't find any clutch fade on the ride, it's just a traditional cable clutch, and there was no fade even in heavy traffic when I was stuck in it for an hour or two. You're not going to have any issues getting ahead of traffic on this, so if you want to lane split and get to the front and then, you know, really get ahead of traffic, that bottom and mid-range really helps. On the highway, I found no issues at all passing people. You know, just wind it on from 80 to about 130 is very comfortable. I would sit on about 140, 150, and the motor was kind of just singing along like no issues whatsoever. Pretty comfortable at these speeds, about 100 mile an hour. Just when you hit bumps, your ass puckers a bit. I did do a couple of top speed runs, and I think I was doing about 170 on one, 174 on another. I think you could get a little bit more, maybe 180 if you're really pushing it, but much faster than what I was doing. You did a really big straight, and I felt like I was going to die. That's about it. So that's about top speed, 170-ish. Overall, I really like the engine on the Trident. I think along with the looks, it's the highlight of the bike. All right, let's talk about the handling and suspension. I'll start with the handling. I think it is a very nice handling motorcycle. It's very neutral and planted feeling and stable at higher speeds. Initially, I thought it could tip in a little bit quicker, and I still think that. I think that's probably because of the geometry of the motorcycle and who it's been designed for. This has been designed for people getting back into riding or people who don't want a super aggressive motorcycle. So they kept it really neutral and kind of understeery. You could help that by putting on more aggressive tires that tip in a bit better. However, these are really good tires, and I'd be loath to change them. When you get good tires on a motorcycle, you don't really want to change them. You want to get your money's worth out of them, and these are good tires. One thing about this bike is when you get on it, you feel kind of instantly comfortable and it's easy to ride. You know, it's easy to get in and out of traffic. It's narrow, it's small, it's kind of nimble, but it's also very neutral and balanced feeling. Flip, flop. Tell you what, it handles good. So while the handling is quite good, I rate the handling. The suspension is a bit more mixed. So up front, we've got non-adjustable shower forks, and on the rear, we've also got a non-adjustable shower shock. The front forks aren't too bad. They're a bit harsh initially on small bumps and sharp bumps. They don't really cope and they don't have enough damping and they rebound a bit too quickly. But I do like how they're set up quite stiff once you get past that. So under heavy braking, they don't dive too much and they're really stable. I like that. So they're pretty good front forks. Not amazing, but good. The rear shock, however, is terrible. Why? Well, it's underdamped, it's harsh, and it doesn't have much travel. So that is not a good combination for a shock. So when you hit big bumps, the rear shock it shits the bed. It doesn't know what to do. And actually, oh, like that. Oh, it doesn't know what to do, so it goes whack, whack. It springs you back out. Like this corner entry really unsettles the bike. Oh, there we go. The front's pretty good. The front is actually pretty good. Like this is as bumpy a quick road as you're probably going to ride on. I'm going slow now, stuck on this bloke. But the front does quite well. The rear is it's no good. It really is no good, and it lets the bike down, to be honest. All right, let's do a deep dive into the shock and why I think it's pretty terrible. On magical smooth roads at, normal speeds, it feels quite good. It feels like sports bike stiff. However, when you pick up the pace or you ride on bumpy roads, which is nearly everywhere, it loses its shit. How does it lose its shit? Well, on the faster stuff, when it gets a little bit bumpy, it kind of chatters and shakes it around. And then when you hit big bumps, it basically whacks down and then it just rebounds up really quickly. It actually nearly throws you out the seat at times. So I was at the back here doing some faster stuff. I was having a blast, but then I found after a point of time I went, this shock is really damping my experience. Yeah, I had to throw that joke in. Hate me. I found myself worrying about the shock. Like any big bunks, I'd kind of cringe because it felt like I was getting penetrated when I hit a bump. I was like, oh fuck. And then you hit big bumps and it kind of shoots you out of the seat. As I said before, the front forks aren't too bad. However, I think they feel worse than they are because they're trying to compensate for that rear shock. So it really unsettles the bike in the corners, especially when there's mid-corner bumps, and then it kind of goes then the front doesn't know what to do, so it pushes as well. And it's just not very good. It's a bit of a shame, to be honest. What I will say though is when you're riding on a smooth road up in the mountains, it's real tight and twisty, the bike feels good. It just when it gets kind of rough or you ride faster, it loses its marbles. Okay, let's talk about the dash and switchgear. I'll start off by saying I really like the dash. It is a great dash. It's easy to read, it's clear and it's bright, and there's plenty of options to go through. So let's do a little deep dive into it. Here we've got our speedometer, here we've got our tachometer, in the middle we have a fuel gauge. Down here we've got another display that we can change. Here we have a gear indicator, it goes through all the gears, time and date. So if we go to this side in a switch block, which is, I really like, it's all good quality by the way, just feels great to use. You scroll up and down and change things by going left and right, and to go select things you hit this menu button here. Down here we also have our indicators, a mode button to change the engine mapping, we'll get onto that later, and then our horn. On this side we've got our starter switch and hazards down here. All right, let's go through the dash. If we scroll down one, boom, this is our menu. The menu only works when the bike is stopped or off. So to get into the menu, we hit this here select button, and it gets your riding modes, bike setup, trip, display setup. Basically display setup, you change all your brightness, and gear shift indicator, rider name, because yeah, rider name, visible trays. Basically I have all of these selected. There's a few there, but it's good to be able to scroll through them all, and it's really easy to scroll through. Then a gear shift indicator. Gear shift indicator, we've got running in, default, and user defined. I just got it as default. You can also disable it. Then you've got language, units, clock, date. It's all really easy to use. And to go back, you just go, and you're back. Bike setup, we have indicators. This is an interesting one. So we got auto, auto advanced, and manual. This is the mixed one for me. I was really excited to have auto cancelling indicators. I've never had them before on a motorcycle, and for the price I was thinking, oh great, this is going to be fantastic, that's a really good feature. However, it's been very mixed for me. I started off on auto basic Basically what that does is self-cancels the indicators. However, I found that they were never self-cancelling. And then I put them on auto advance, and this is what I've actually stuck with now. So what auto advance does is, if we flick the indicators, it's 1, 2, 3. So it's like a passing. I really like that function. Then if you hold the indicator, like so, it'll stay on. This is what I've settled on. It's still a little bit fiddly at times because you'll press them and they'll stay on, or you go to press it and it only does the 3. So it's a little bit fiddly to get used to, and I find they never actually self-cancel themselves. Right, here we got traction control, very easy to get to, enabled, disabled. Then your servicing, you can set when you want your bike to be serviced. So go down, this is your trip meter. This is how many kilometers I've done on the bike, 795. So I've done a few kilometers on it now. 13 hours, and I've averaged 57.4 kilometers per hour. So one thing that's very cool is, see here on the main display, the gear indicator is here. When you scroll down, it moves it up to here. So you've always got it. I really like that function. We scroll across, we've got our trip 2, which is I've been using for each tank. So scrolling down, we have fuel status. This will tell you liters per 100 at any current point of time. This one here is the kilometers left in your tank till empty, and this is your average liters per 100 kilometers. As you can see, it gets very good fuel consumption, 4.8 liters per 100 on my latest tank, and on the other one I believe it's 4.7, yeah, so very good fuel economy. We scroll down, we've got a temperature gauge, clear and easy to read. I like having it. It never went above 3, even in hot weather and heavy traffic. Here, service intervals, that's a date it's due, all the kilometers, and that is the overall kilometers of the motorcycle. Brightness of the screen. So I've got this set 2 down for the brightest because I found at night it is quite bright. So I've got it set down to because I think it's a really good balance there. One thing I will say is it does get dirty quite easily. I washed the bike just before I came here, and you can see it's still got a couple of smears and stuff on it. So you really got to keep it clean, or it does get a little bit harder to read. Okay, let's talk about the brakes, and then we'll talk about the electronics and riding modes. The front brakes are very good. I rate them highly. We've got an adjustable brake lever, which I really like. I've just set it into middle. It seems to work perfectly for me. They got good feel. They're not too bitey at the front, and you don't have to pull them too hard to get good power. And they do have very good power. I've been impressed by the brakes. 100. Now. It's pretty good. Very good brakes. The rear is not quite as good. Look, it's fine. It works fine. Fine isn't exactly an endearing quality though, is it? I find that you have to press it down quite hard for anything to happen, and then after that it can lock up. And another bad thing is the rear brake lever. It's kind of this cheaper steel quality, and it's really smooth and it's quite slippery. It could be a very easy fix. You could just put some tape there or something on it, but I wish they didn't skimp on the quality a bit here. I know they're going to cut costs where they can, but it's slippery. However, it is in a good location and it's easy to reach with your boot. The ABS, I had no issues with the ABS. I did activate at times under really heavy braking when I was doing emergency stops, and on gravel sections and stuff like this. You see it's really leafy. I was able to activate it, but that's not a bad thing, because if you're activating it on that, it's a fair chance your front's going to slip out or do something nasty as well. So I found the ABS to be quite good. The rear, it was fine. However, if you did really heavily brake, it would do that, you know, activate and do that and shake your foot around a bit. But the ABS systems, no issues whatsoever. Let's talk about the traction control. The traction control works fine, and it's quite smooth to a point. And I find it to be a little bit too intrusive. I think they've deliberately set it like that due to the style of motorcycle this is and the market they're trying to appeal to. However, for me, being a bit more experienced, and this is going to attract some experienced riders as well, don't get me wrong. When you're really accelerating out of corners, and even just in a straight line when you're trying to punch it, it activates and you can feel it just limiting the bike. And say if you're leant over and trying to hammer it on, there's not a lack of grip, it just detects even the smallest amount and it'll limit the power and kind of ruins your drive a bit. Traction control intervening a lot there. Oh, traction control. The traction control is, it's a bit generous. Activates too early. Unfortunately, that's exacerbated by that rear shock I was talking about, that bloody horror of a thing. Since it's chatting around and then when it gets bumpy, the traction control, it's already a bit intrusive, and then combined with the shock being just pretty useless, it doesn't know what to do. So I was like, and it kind of really limits your drive coming into corners, which is a shame. Thankfully, it's very easy to turn off. I'll show you how you do it. We'll get to the menu, boom, boom, boom. Bike setup, traction control, off. That's it, it's off. One thing that is annoying is it always leaves it down here that it is off. So you actually can't see some of the displays that are supposed to be all the way down the bottom. So we'll get to trip meter, you can't see the hours you've been riding, or fuel status, you can't see your current fuel consumption and stuff like that. So the traction control also works as wheelie control on this. They've combined the two. So basically, if the front wheel is at a different speed to the rear wheel, it'll stop the bike from wheeling. It does work well and it stops the bike from wheeling, and it's only when you want to really pop it up that it'll shit the bed and not know what to do. It'll go and just slam you back down. But overall, it's pretty good. Thankfully, since it's so easy to turn off, you can just turn it off and then you can do your clutch up wheelies and have a bit of fun. Doing my 0 to 100 runs, I did probably 4 or 5 of them. When you turn the traction control off, it is faster. It's noticeably faster. You can launch harder, and the front's still not going to flip or anything like that because it's, you know, it's not exactly an animal. It's got plenty of power, but it's not 180 horsepower beast. As I mentioned earlier, the bike does have riding modes, and I'll show you what they are. So you just click this button, boom. You can do that when you're riding as well, and you've got a road map and a rain map. You can select them by either going sideways or just hit the mode button again. We can also adjust them by going into the menu. Go here, go in the menu, riding modes, rain. You choose what ABS you want, so there's only road here, what map you want, so you can kind of customize it a little bit. Traction control, you can turn it on rain or road. Honestly, I tried both out in a lot of different conditions. Just leave it on the road function. The rain, it's not worth using. Yes, you can light the bike up in very treacherous conditions, but as the fueling is so good and you know it's got 54 horsepower, it's not a fire breather, you can really manage it. I find it's kind of superfluous and you don't need it. So sitting on the bike, it is a very neutral, comfortable motorcycle. I'm probably as big as you want to be on this to be comfortable on longer rides. I got stuck in traffic and I was riding for like 2 or 3 hours, and towards the end it felt quite cramped in my leg section. Like the seat to peg ratio is just too small for me. If you're a little bit smaller or someone who's of shorter stature, this bike is absolutely fantastic. On longer rides, not the best because there's no wind protection at all. Like it's very naked, you're just getting blasted in the face by wind. And then a little bit cramped in the legs for me. I would like the seat to be a little bit higher, just for me and my height, because then if you lower the pegs, then you're losing your ground clearance as well, which you don't want. The seat is a really good shape, I like it. I like the finish on it, the vinyl feels nice. However, with that shock there, bouncing you up and down and trying to penetrate you all the time, the seat does get a little bit tiresome and could have a little bit more cushion for me on those longer rides. I've had the bike for 2 weeks now. I've done 800 kilometers on it through a mixture of all conditions, rain, commuting, having fun in the twisties, down at the beach, like I've ridden it everywhere. And overall, it's a really easy bike to live with. And most importantly, it's fun. Like my normal bike is a KTM 1290 Super Duke, which is an absolute animal, and I still have fun riding this bike. So that kind of says a lot. It handles good, the brakes are good, I really like the dash, it comes with good stock tires, and it's only the suspension that lets it down, and that's mainly that rear shock there. Now you could fix that, you could put in a different rear shock or get a suspension tuner to look at it and possibly fix it up. I think it's a bit of an oversight in their behalf. I know they're trying to keep prices down on this, it's about $12,500 right away. So they had to skimp somewhere. It's just, I feel like they could have done a slightly better job on the shock. So would I buy one? Yeah, I think I would if I was in the market for this kind of motorcycle. It's not a resounding like, yes, go out and buy one, but I don't think you're gonna find a better restricted engine than that. It's really punchy and it's fun to use. And you didn't hear this from me, but I know for a fact that the Street Triple 660 If you de-restrict that and give it a tune, it makes more power than the Street Triple 675, and I believe it'll be quite easy to do that to this. All right, that's it from me. I hope you enjoyed the review. If you did, hit that like and subscribe button. Every subscriber counts. It helps me get more bikes and doing more content like this. Also, make sure you check out my other content, and most importantly, keep it on the back wheel. All right, catch you everyone. See you.